because it's all about time. It's all about time.
Absolutely.
The guest time is important, but guess what? Our time is important as well.
Preparation's important.
Right. So we work real hard to produce this show.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
You invite a guest over for dinner to have a lovely evening and a lively discussion. You carefully plan out the menu, making sure that everybody's tastes and needs are met, going over the details to assure that everybody has a good time and that the night moves along smoothly. The moment arrives and it's showtime, but your guests are nowhere to be found. Concern creeps into your mind, hoping that everything's okay and that they're safe. Maybe there's a reason, maybe there's not, maybe there's a justification, or maybe there's not. But all the hard work that was put into this wonderful event goes to waste. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Falason. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we talk about the suffering of cancellations.
We have a very special guest today.
Ourselves.
Oh, no, he's not here.
No, it's Casper, friendly ghost. He's sitting right over there. We've come across this a couple times, and tonight
it happens.
Tonight was one of those times. There's many different reasons why it happens, and I think that it would be interesting for us to sit down and talk about it.
The first one was because of snow.
No, back. You're going back.
I'm going way back.
But you got to go back further. The first one.
Oh, yeah.
The first one was a little bit different.
Yeah, the first one was, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. But let's get into our social media questions. So it's just Mike and I in here in the studio. And, we haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. It's actually the first you and I episode of the new year. So let's get into our social media question. And that comes from Crazy Chaka. Chaka's one of my favorite characters.
I'm going to put this one on you first.
You want to put it on me?
You always come to me first. I'm going to put it on you
I thought it's a gentlemanly thing to do. It says, what is the most valuable thing in your life? I thought about this one and I thought about this one. And I have to say the most valuable thing in my life is time. All right? They're not making any more of it. It goes away every second of every day. What happened right now? It's gone. And you got to move forward. Without time, everybody's going to say, it's an easy answer. It's a layup for a lot of people. Oh, my kids, my wife, this is more, it's always people. But without time, you'll have time for, none of that matters.
You're always setting time for something. I got to be here at 4 o'clock. I got to be there at 4 o'clock. Time is always consistent, because Father Time never stops.
But people don't value it, and
Exactly.
that's what I think about it. So people don't value it. A little quick story is one year, when I was a brand new cop, we didn't make much money then, and I couldn't afford really expensive gifts for everybody. I'd just gotten together with my wife now, and I thought, but I'm really good with my hands, so I figured I would take my time. Yeah,
With yourself?
With myself.
Okay.
I would take my time and I would make something for everybody. I would take time out of my day, because time I had, money I didn't, and I would make something. I made everything from heart-shaped boxes to Christmas ornaments to all these little different things, and they were very personalized, and I really put my heart and soul into it. Unfortunately, people don't value time the same way I do. And actually, one of her family members said this to me, and I said, the most valuable thing you can give is time to somebody. And he says, well, I'd rather just give money because my time's more valuable. I'm like, well, that was a really shitty thing to say.
Terrible attitude.
It's an awful attitude. You appreciate things. So that gift that you got from your spouse or your significant other, that's expensive, and maybe you wanted it, and you're happy about it. Think about the gift of time that your kids gave you, where for your birthday they actually made you a card, and that's why I arrived at that. The most valuable thing to me is time. I cherish the time I got to spend with my grandfather. I cherish the time that I spend with my kids. I cherish the time that I spend with my wife. So without time, none of that exists.
Time you spend with me?
No, that's wasted time. Mike, what do you think?
I'm just going to talk about yours first. Time never stops. I say all the time, both of us have been very close to seeing the end. Yeah. So I tell people, make the most of it every day. Make the most of it every day. You don't know, everybody says, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't know what tonight's going to bring. So make the most out of your time. But to me, the most important things in my life is my kids. There's nothing more to me Nothing means more to me than my son and my daughter.
Think about the time you invested in them. And listen, I'm not trying to be self-serving.
Exactly. And that's where this meshes. The time I spent with my kids.
Going to their games.
Just the stupid little stuff.
Picking them up when they hurt their knee.
Making them both learn to ride bicycles.
How about making them lunch?
Anything. You're sitting down and eating lunch with them. Mm-hmm. I always say, thank God I was in good shape back in the day because both my kids learned to ride a bike. And I ran behind them the whole time they started riding a bike. But yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, to me, the most valuable thing in my life is my two kids.
I agree with you 100%. My kids are the world to me. I'd die every day for my kids if I had to. I tried to go a step back further and what facilitates my relationship with my kids. And they're both there's no right or wrong answer here. It's not that thing. I don't want anybody to think I really don't want anybody to think my kids aren't important to me because you know exactly how important they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a tough question because it's singular to everybody. Somebody who just had a near-death experience, all right? Well, guess what's important to them? Their health. Or somebody who lost it. Yeah. Charlie Cifarelli. I talked to him, and the most valuable thing to him is walking because he's having difficulty walking. The funny thing is it's only valuable until when you lose it. But we got to change that.
Let's take another one of ours. What do you think is the most valuable thing to Chantel right now?
So our good friend Chantel, her mother's having some health issues. And
Belladama Cigars.
Go to Belladama Cigars. Nice big shout out to her. And we pray for her all the time because her mother's having these difficulties and her mother's her best friend. She was in tears to me on the phone the other day. And, at the time of this recording, who knows what's going to happen at the time of the airing date of this. And I pray for her. Again, it's that just to have that one more moment. Think about the people you've lost in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just look at that one more moment, just to sit with them on a bench and talk with them.
I said a couple weeks ago, I lost my mother on December 20th, 2011. Mm-hmm. Just that one more minute, that one more time to hear her.
Maybe that's that one question that you always wanted to ask her, but you never got a chance.
I'd love to hear her yell at me one more time.
Michael.
Just to hear her. Yeah, it's exactly it. Michael. Just to hear her yell at me one more time.
Pull your pants up, Michael.
Stop touching that.
So listen, Crazy Chaka, that's a tough one. Thank you so much for sending it in.
Well, I mean, it's loaded. We can go 1,000 different ways with that one.
Actually, the suffering of time. That's another future episode, which we talked about in our Frozen Instagram Live tonight.
Well, Father Time never stops, but you can't predict Mother Nature. If they called it Father Nature, you'd be able to predict it. I'm sorry, ladies. I was just kidding.
Before we go any further, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody, but we do trust them. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotaofhackensack.com. Let them find you a car. So, Mike, we're here in the studio.
With all our friends.
Well, friends is we'll throw that term around loosely, friends. But, so we're here to talk about the suffering of cancellations. We've come across this several times. And, again, that was a nice social media question because it's all about time. It's all about time.
Absolutely.
The guest time is important, but guess what? Our time is important as well.
Preparation's important.
Right. So we work real hard to produce this show. I mean, think about all the work that we put in there, all the phone calls that we make, all the preparation, all the Andrew's time in producing this with A&J Media and
studio time.
Studio
time's not free.
Correct.
We rent the studio, and if we don't get a guest, we're kind of stuck with our thumb up our ass for.
I mean, let's walk through the production of one show. Okay, and maybe that'll give people a little idea to when we get a cancellation for whatever reason. Sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes they're just careless. The preparation for the show.
Sometimes there's a holiday that comes up and they didn't realize they'd be down the shore for the holiday.
Well, that's another one. That's definitely another one. I just throw some statistics out to you. So I'm posting on social media at least 8 times a week, at least 8 times. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I don't do a whole lot with LinkedIn or Twitter, but it does. I do post to there. So all those posts have to be created. And then our shows that we already recorded have to be time-stamped. Then clips have to be pulled from them. Then they have to be worked into social media formats. So that's just on the technological stuff. Andrew, on the other hand, has to sit behind the board, switch cameras. When you're talking, cameras on you. Doing that in post-production, which we've done on a couple shows, becomes very, very challenging. I mean, that's just a window into like a normal week. And then there's production of outlines, and then there's productions of openings, and then there's calling guests, and there's scheduling guests, and there's a lot that goes into this.
Like you said, even the scheduling, we only record once a week. Who's available this day, who's available that day, who can't do it at 7 o'clock at night, who can't do it at this time, who can't do it at that time. I mean, it really turns into a cluster.
I mean, we use that shared calendar app for guests, and it's nice because if you have somebody
Can we
good,
give them a shout out?
if they want to sponsor it. No, it's Time Tree. We use Time Tree.
We use Time Tree all the time.
So on Time Tree, Mike has access to it. I have access to it. Andrew has access to it. So if you have somebody and a Wednesday's open, like for instance, if we're not doing a show, we'll put in there no show, but that this Wednesday's open, scheduled, done, and I automatically get a notification that says that was scheduled that day. So it's important to have that communication, to have that openness. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
And I say all the time, you run the show. I'm more the comedic value.
You're failing.
I'm more the comedic value to the show. But I know what you go through. And like I said, I think you're a little bit of a micromanager. But you bust your ass for the show.
Well, I told you why
you
that
bust
happens.
your ass for the show.
And I'm not.
And the other thing is too, we miss a lot of family functions doing a show. Mm-hmm. Because we're locked into a studio. When we were in your basement, we could. We had flexibility. We could do. Yeah, listen.
But there's a change. There's a change in that. So having a studio, the average person's going to know that we pay for studio time, and we're not complaining, but because we love where we are, and we love where we've gone and where we've been,
and we don't love the people that we're working with.
But if I'm telling a guest, hey, come down to my basement, they know it's my basement. When I'm not paying for studio time, there's no stake in the game for them. So for them to bail out, it's much easier than say, okay, you're coming into a studio, you have a production, we have production costs, all that stuff. So there's a little bit more, leverage is the wrong word, but there's a little bit more backing to us, I guess would be the right thing.
Yeah, it's legitimacy.
Mm-hmm. No, legitimate. Yeah. Okay, that's a good word. That's the word, legitimacy.
You want to write that down?
Yeah, I'm going to write that down right now.
Things we learned at the end of the show, legitimacy.
I'm going to go define that one, the diploma. But yeah, it does give us a little bit more legitimacy as far as that goes. But getting, even as much as getting up here, you got that. I got an easier commute than you. You got to travel on Route 3.
Route 3 and 46.
Which
a nightmare.
And we record at
absolute nightmare.
We show up at 6:30 to do our Instagram lives, and then we start recording between 7 and 7:30, depending on what time the guest gets here.
I mean, we have this drive to get here, but somebody has to walk like 3 blocks here. I mean, it's got to be a travesty for.
And he asks for a ride home all the time.
I always do. It's the cardio for me.
So I don't want to hear you get no snow days from studio time.
I don't get any snow days. Okay, I don't get absolutely any snow days.
Mike, you got to hang on from recording. I got to go pick Andrew up and put him on my back and carry him over to snow.
Speaking of that, we have had people that canceled because of snow days.
Yeah, we had. So let's get into some of the reasons before we get into individual things, because some of them have been for good reason, some of them have not.
Tonight was
an unforeseen problem. It was a medical issue, but there's some reasons. Like there are certain people, you have an emergency in your family, and we're family guys, so we understand that. So we understand if you had a death in the family, something popped up. And I'm not talking about something popped up 2 days prior and you call me 15 minutes before. Like that's where it starts to get a little hairy.
Yeah, we've had people bail out on us 15 minutes before.
Yes, we have.
Actually, if you think about it, back in the day when we were in the basement, we did 2 episodes the one day.
Yeah, we were recording Kevin Dombrowski.
You get a text right in the middle of recording the first episode, and the second guest bailed on you. That
could you tell? Thank God we weren't on camera because my face just got
face
red.
Just dropped.
And I remember turning to you and going, "He just fucking canceled." I was so mad.
And I don't want to say it was a big time star. Let's just say it was a well-known person.
We could say it was a reality star.
Yeah, it was a reality star.
He was a reality star, and he's a reality star in his own mind. And I know I have mutual friends with him, and something like that, I don't ever think about. I don't ever think I'd want him back in. And that's my own personal feeling.
Well, I told you I saw him again another time, and I said, hey, I'm Mike from the Suffering Podcast. He said, oh, yeah, I had to bail the first time. He said, I'd love to come in and do the podcast again. Here's my number. Call me whenever you want to come in. We were going to open a date for him to come in. But we almost sold ourselves for that one. And we talked about that a lot.
We're like, I don't know if I want it.
It doesn't really meet what we're all about.
No, because there wasn't much there.
But it would have gave us exposure, and we decided not to do it because we're not going to sell ourselves out.
And the guy was about as deep as a mud puddle, too. Listen, so he did what he did to us, and I'm sure he had his reasons. Hey, listen, if he would have told us a couple days before, hey, I'm going down to the shore with my family, I'd be like, cool, go take care of your family. That's all right.
Have at it.
I understand. But 15 minutes before?
And he didn't even call you.
No, my friend called me. My go-between called me.
Didn't even call you, text you too.
And that's just inconsiderate of our time. Getting back to that time thing. Like, why is my time? And it took me a long time to learn this. Why is my time not valuable?